If you're an organization that handles personal data, you probably know there's this huge gap between having a GDPR policy and actually enforcing it day to day. So in this explainer, we're going to dig into why that gap is there and, more importantly, how you can finally close it.
So let's start at the beginning. When GDPR came on the scene, it really wasn't just another set of rules. It was a fundamental shift. All of a sudden, being accountable for personal data meant a whole lot more than just storing it securely.
And this brought us this new, really powerful idea: continuous accountability. You can forget about those one-time checks or annual audits. This is about being responsible for how data is accessed, used, and shared literally every minute of every single day. It's a constant, living thing.
And just look at how specific these expectations are. GDPR says you have to prove you have active control over everything. We're talking who can even see a file, what they can do with it, whether they can copy or share it, and even putting an expiration date on their access. And the real kicker? You need to be able to audit every single one of those actions.
So, why all this intensity? Why the focus on control? Well, it's because GDPR sees data protection as a basic human right. The thing is, when data gets misused, the damage isn't just to a company's bottom line. The real harm is personal. It can hit someone's finances, it can lead to discrimination, it can completely destroy an individual's sense of privacy and trust.
And that brings us right to the heart of the matter. This massive enforcement gap. It's like a giant canyon between what's written down in your GDPR policy document and what an employee actually does with a customer file on a random Tuesday morning. Okay, let's make this real. Here's a super common scenario. Your company hires a third-party vendor, maybe for marketing or HR, and you share some personal data with them so they can do their job. Then, 6 months go by, and the project's over.
Now, GDPR forces us to ask some really simple but, honestly, incredibly tough questions. Was that vendor's access cut off the second the project ended? Are you absolutely positive they didn't just reuse that data for another purpose? And here's the big one. Can you prove any of this to a regulator? For most companies, if they're being honest, the answer is probably no. And this is exactly why it's so hard. Because data is never just sitting still in one safe place, right? It's flying around in this chaotic ecosystem. It gets emailed across departments, sent to partners, downloaded to laptops, copied just for convenience. With every single one of these actions, your control gets weaker. But under GDPR, your accountability never does. And here's the point that so many people miss. This isn't really a cybersecurity problem. Your biggest GDPR risk isn't some hacker in a dark room. No, it's a well-meaning employee who just needs to get their job done and hit Save As. The risk comes from these everyday data behaviors: giving people too much access, using data for things it wasn't intended for, and making uncontrolled copies. These are compliance risks, pure and simple.
So you might be thinking, okay, why can't we just solve this with our current systems and training? And well, it turns out that these traditional, manual ways of doing things, they just can't keep up with the demands of continuous accountability.
It all boils down to one single foundational challenge. Before you can protect personal data, you have to know it's there. So, in most companies today, who makes that call? Who looks at a file and decides if it has sensitive info inside?
The answer, almost every time, is that we put that huge responsibility squarely on the shoulders of individual employees. We just expect them to get it right every single time.
But come on, let's be realistic for a second. Personal data can be hidden anywhere. In an email, a spreadsheet, a presentation. Expecting every single employee, from sales to HR, to be a data protection expert who can spot this stuff and apply complex legal rules thousands of times a day, well, that's not a strategy. That's a hope, and it's a recipe for failure.
So, if we can't rely on human judgment alone, what's the answer? Well, to really bridge that enforcement gap, we have to move beyond just writing policies and start building in a new layer of control, an automated one.
This is what we call an automated enforcement layer. And the whole idea is to shift our thinking. We need to stop focusing on just protecting the servers where the data lives and start protecting the data itself, enforcing your rules in real time, right at the moment of use.
So what does this layer actually do? Well, it automatically applies your rules to the data. It builds the controls into the file, so those controls follow the data no matter where it goes. It enforces your policies regardless of what the user tries to do. And maybe best of all, it gives you evidence by default, creating that proof of compliance automatically. So what does this look like in the real world? This right here is an example. It's a platform called Siccura Regula, and it's built to be that exact automated enforcement layer we're talking about. It's a tool that brings together data classification, policy rules, and real technical controls to make GDPR requirements an operational reality.
And this brings us to this really powerful concept called enforcement by design. The goal here isn't to just detect a data breach after it happens. The goal is to design a system that prevents it from ever happening in the first place.
The absolute key, the game changer, is that the rules are attached directly to the data. The policy literally becomes a property of the file itself. That means the protection goes wherever the data goes, whether it's on your network, on a partner's computer, or even sitting on a USB drive.
So picture this in practice. An authorized user opens a file. If the policy for that file says no copying, then boom, the copy-paste function is just disabled for that document. Printing and taking screenshots can be blocked. And when a project is over, that user's access can be set to automatically expire. The rules are just always on.
And this takes us right back to that crucial need for proof. With this kind of system, every single action, every time someone views a file, every blocked attempt to copy it, it's all logged automatically. The audit trail isn't an extra step you have to do later, it's just a natural part of using the data. That is accountability by design. So let's end with this thought. GDPR made organizations accountable in principle, but a system like Siccura Regula is what makes that accountability enforceable in practice. It takes the rules off the page and puts them into action, automatically. And that leaves every organization with a new question. It's not just what is our policy anymore, it's how can we prove it's being followed every single time.